There is something no one tells you about marriage. Not about the wedding, not about the vows, not about the honeymoon. It's about what happens after all of that, when the noise settles, when life becomes routine, and when two people are left facing each other in the quiet. That's when intimacy either deepens or slowly starts to disappear. And the strange thing? Most couples never realize which direction they're heading until they're already far apart. When we talk about intimacy in marriage, most people immediately think of the physical side. And yes, physical closeness is a real, valid, and important part of a married relationship. It always has been. But here's what psychology tells us again and again. Physical intimacy without emotional connection is like a house built without a foundation. It stands for a while, but eventually it starts to crack. The couples who stay deeply connected are not the ones who simply share a bed. They are the ones who share something far more invisible. They share understanding. They understand each other's silence. They notice each other's mood before a single word is spoken. They know when to move closer and when to give space. That kind of knowing, that quiet, deep awareness of another human being, is what real marital intimacy is built on. And the truth is, most of us were never taught how to build it. We grew up watching love stories that ended at the wedding. We were shown how to fall in love. Nobody showed us how to stay there. Let's talk about what actually happens inside a marriage over time. In the beginning, everything feels electric. Every conversation is meaningful. Every moment of closeness feels intentional. Partners are curious about each other, genuinely curious. They ask questions, they listen, they make effort. This phase, psychologists call the attachment formation stage. The brain is literally flooded with neurochemicals: dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin. Everything your partner does feels interesting. Everything about them feels special. But here's what nobody prepares you for. That neurochemical flood doesn't last forever. It's not supposed to. After somewhere between 12 and 24 months, sometimes longer, the brain adjusts. The chemicals settle. The intensity naturally softens. And when that happens, one of two things occurs in a marriage. Either the couple transitions into something deeper, a more mature, rooted form of emotional connection, or they mistake the settling of intensity for the death of love. Many couples fall into the second category, not because they stopped loving each other, but because they stopped understanding what love looks like after the initial phase ends. They stop asking each other real questions. They stop creating new shared experiences. The conversations become logistical: bills, schedules, responsibilities. Emotional check-ins become rare. Physical closeness starts to feel obligatory rather than chosen. And slowly, without either person noticing, distance begins to grow. Here is the moment that defines most marriages. It's not a big fight. It's not a dramatic event. It's much quieter than that. It's the first time one partner reaches for the other emotionally or physically, and feels like they're reaching into empty space. Maybe one person wants to talk about something that's been weighing on them, but their partner is on their phone, distracted, present in the room but absent in every way that matters. Maybe one person initiates physical closeness, but there's no warmth returned, no real engagement, just mechanical response or quiet avoidance. And the person who reached out, they don't say anything. They pull back. They tell themselves it's fine. It's just one moment. But that moment gets repeated. And slowly, a quiet decision gets made deep inside the mind of that person. I will stop reaching. This is the shift. This is where the real disconnection begins. Not in anger, not in conflict, in silence, in withdrawal, in the gradual resignation that closeness, emotional or physical, is no longer safe to want. Let's go deeper into what's actually happening here, because this is where most people misunderstand intimacy entirely. There is a concept in relationship psychology called emotional attunement. It simply means the ability to tune into your partner's emotional state, to be aware of how they're feeling, what they need, and how to respond to that need in a way that makes them feel seen. Couples who maintain strong emotional attunement are not necessarily the ones who never fight. They're not the ones who have perfect communication. They're the ones who, even in imperfect moments, never make each other feel invisible. Now think about physical intimacy through this lens. When physical closeness happens in the presence of emotional attunement, it deepens the bond between partners in a way that nothing else can. The physical experience becomes an expression of mutual understanding, of trust, of genuine desire that goes beyond the body. But when physical intimacy is pursued without emotional attunement, without real awareness of the other person's comfort, their emotional state, their feelings in that moment, it starts to feel isolating, even uncomfortable. This is why so many couples find themselves confused. They are physically close, but emotionally they feel completely alone. The solution isn't complicated, but it does require intention. It requires one partner to actually see the other. To ask not out of obligation, but out of genuine care, how are you feeling today? What do you need right now? What would make you feel closest to me? And it requires the other partner to feel safe enough to answer honestly. That safety, that psychological safety between two people, is the foundation of everything. Without it, no physical closeness in the world will create genuine intimacy. Now let's step back and look at this from a wider perspective. We live in a time when human connection is simultaneously more accessible and more shallow than ever before. We have more ways to communicate with each other than any generation in history. And yet, loneliness inside marriage is one of the most widely reported emotional experiences of our era. Why? Because technology has taught us to interact rapidly, constantly, and on the surface. Short responses.
Reactions.
Scrolling, we're trained to consume quickly and move on. But intimacy, real intimacy, requires the opposite of that. It requires slowness, presence, patience, the willingness to sit with another person in discomfort and not rush past it. It requires looking at your partner not at your phone, not at the television, and actually registering them as a human being with an inner world that is different from yours. A person with fears, with desires, with things left unsaid. Modern relationship psychology increasingly points to something called emotional bids. A bid is any attempt one partner makes to connect with the other. It could be as small as pointing out something outside the window, sharing a funny thought, reaching for a hand, or asking a quiet question at the end of the day. Research shows that couples who respond to each other's emotional bids, even the small, seemingly insignificant ones, build dramatically stronger bonds over time. They develop something researchers call turning toward behavior. The couples who ignore each other's bids, who are too busy, too distracted, too comfortable in their distance, are the ones who gradually find themselves living like strangers in the same house. This dynamic shows up powerfully in physical intimacy too. When one partner has been consistently not seen emotionally, they begin to withdraw from physical closeness as well, not as punishment, but as protection. Because the vulnerability required for real physical intimacy is only possible when emotional safety exists. So why does any of this matter to you? Because chances are right now in your relationship, some version of this pattern is already present. Maybe you've noticed moments when your partner seemed distant and you didn't know why. Maybe you felt unseen or unheard and didn't know how to name it. Maybe physical intimacy in your marriage has started to feel less connected than it used to. Less warm, less mutual. More like something that happens between two people who are going through motions they've both forgotten the meaning of. Or maybe everything feels fine, but something quiet inside you wonders if fine is enough. Here's what psychology wants you to understand. Distance in a marriage is almost never sudden. It builds slowly. Through small moments of disconnection, through needs that weren't expressed, through bids that weren't answered, through physical encounters that happen without real presence. And the same way distance builds slowly, so does closeness. A marriage doesn't transform overnight, but it can begin transforming in one conversation, one moment of genuine attention, one instance of choosing to turn toward your partner instead of away. The question is never, can this marriage be more intimate? The question is always, are both people willing to choose it? Real intimacy in marriage isn't about technique. It isn't about frequency. It isn't about any specific physical action or behavior. It is about two people deciding again and again, in the small, ordinary moments of everyday life, to actually be there for each other, to stay curious, to stay present, to keep reaching toward each other even when it's easier not to. That decision made quietly, daily, without applause, is what builds the kind of marriage that feels like home. At what point does emotional distance in a marriage actually begin? Is it the first ignored moment, or something that was missing long before that? And here is perhaps the deeper question. Do couples grow apart because love fades, or because presence fades first, and love simply follows? Intimacy in marriage is not a destination you arrive at once and then keep forever. It is a practice. A daily, quiet, sometimes imperfect practice of choosing to see your partner, to make them feel safe enough to be honest, to hold physical closeness with the same care you hold their emotional world, The marriages that last not just in years but in genuine warmth are not built on grand gestures. They are built on the small, consistent, deliberate act of showing up for another person, fully, patiently, with respect for everything they carry. That is what intimacy actually looks like. Not perfect, not dramatic, not always easy, but real. And real in the end is the only kind that matters.